Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Chetan Sharma, and I'll be the moderator for the session. My focus is on market research, product strategy, and intellectual property, and I've been in the space for a while. And I thought Gary gave a good introduction to the topic itself as to what the proposition is. At this point, I would like to invite all the panelists. We can dive deeper into what's working and what's not, and how you should think about execution on sponsored data, or looking at different models to monetize data or engage customers, both from the operator point of view, but more importantly from a brand perspective as to how brands can think about it. So why don't you all come on? So I'll have each of the panelists just to give a quick intro about themselves, their role in the value chain as it pertains to new business models with respect to data. And then I'll just go straight into Q&A, and I'll try to incorporate some Q&A at the end. And so, Adia, why don't you go first?
Hi, my name is Adia Sowho. I'm the Director of Digital Business at Etisalat, Nigeria, a telco in Nigeria, obviously. I cover value-added services, content, mobile advertising, financial services, and so on and so on and so on.
Dan?
Great. My name is Dan Rosen. I'm the Global Director of Advertising at Telefonica. I'm focused on monetizing the advertising assets, specifically within our footprint. We focus on three core areas, which are we try and focus close to the core of the business. So where we focus is on messaging, which is what you'd sort of expect from a carrier. But we're also focusing on customer data activation in programmatic and display, which is what you may see Axonics here at the show, which is our play into programmatic display. And then the next core asset that we're involved in looking at monetizing and making it relevant for advertising is sponsored data. And we're very excited about what it can bring.
Okay, great. Gary?
My name is Gary Greenbaum. I'm the CEO of Syntonic. We provide enabling technology to enable these new monetization models, sponsored data, data rewards, and data-free subscription services. We also have our own service that we've deployed around the world to enable these new business models.
I'm Tim Sherwood. I'm responsible for our mobility business development at Tata Communications. And so what we're looking at Tata is leveraging our hundreds of operator relationships we have, as well as relationships on the other side with different types of Fortune 1000 multinational retail brands to create a multinational, multi-carrier exchange so that the large multinationals, if they want to reach their distributed customer base, they can go through our exchange and work through the operator relationships we have. And we're working with Syntonic to roll out that exchange.
Great. Yeah, I mean, between the four of them, they pretty much cover the globe. So it's good to get perspective on what's going on in different geographies. So I'd probably like to start with the operator viewpoint as to what's the motivation behind looking for alternate business models. What's the market telling you that's making you think that the use case is there and that's why you're trying it? What's the business justification for looking for alternate business models? Maybe Dan could start.
Sure. I mean, it's a really good question. I think at Telefonica, what we try and do is try and look at things through a customer focus and a consumer focus. So certainly, obviously, I'm in a commercial remit here. So that the driving force in terms of what Telefonica as a business from my unit needs is revenue. But in terms of from an innovation perspective, in terms of we wouldn't do anything that's not going to compromise our consumer. If you look at sponsored data, it's, I think, one of the few things that exist where it's a genuine win-win-win for everyone involved. And there aren't many of those in business, right? It's a win for the consumer, because who doesn't like free stuff, and all you have to do is look at the usage of megabytes on a daily, monthly basis that is growing largely through mobile video. So it's great for the consumer. It's great for brands because, as Gary referred to there and what we've seen directly in our markets, particularly Brazil, which is our star market for sponsored data, we're seeing engagement rates move between 80 or 100% for where you enable things like sponsored data. So it's a win for the brand, engagement when they need it, and obviously for us, it's an alternative business model, and where we're extracting revenues from brands instead of directly for consumers. And at the same time, we're not giving this asset away. We're just transferring the people who are selling it, turning it more from B2C into B2B2C, so to speak. So for us, it's a very clear benefit that not only provides a nice business model, but perhaps most importantly, it's something which will sit very well with the consumer and brand.
Got it. Adia, from your vantage point, operating across different geography as an operator, but also what are you seeing in Nigeria?
Okay, so Nigeria is a bit earlier in the curve than perhaps Brazil. Sponsored data is still a new consideration, and it's something that we are just on the brink of launching across all 4 major telcos. I guess because the results are yet to materialize, I'm not as excited about it as my colleague Dan here. I think it's going to.
What was the motivation? Like, why did you even think about it in the first place?
We were trying to open up the market, right? So there are many cost-based challenges to converting a user from just even creating a telecom user, right? So first you've got to go get a SIM card. Then you've got to go get a handset. Yeah. And are you in a part of the country where there is a network? If you're not in the part of the country where there is a network, then you have to get a second SIM card and maybe a second handset. Oh, wait, so now you have to buy 2 handsets. Yeah. You have to buy cheaper ones which are not data capable. Then we're trying to get you on the internet. Then we're trying to get you to buy a data plan and keep paying for it every month. Yeah. Then which phone do you top up? So it's there's just a cost barrier at every stage, and just when you think you've passed through them, another one pops up. Yeah. Right. So sponsored data presents an opportunity to sort of introduce the internet to people and allow it to establish its own value in their lives, so that they can justify paying for it. Right. Yeah. Because if the justification has not materialized, right, they're just not going to. A certain type of consumer, middle to the bottom of the pyramid, is just not going to commit to that cost. Right. Right, but having said that, you don't necessarily want to create a monster, and then when the consumer just has so many people sponsoring their data, they're not interested in paying for it at all. You know what I mean? It becomes a demand, and I wish we were like a utility company, but we're not. We're still for profit, so it creates a little bit of a challenge in my market that we're not really sure how that story is going to unfold.
Got it. Tim, you have an exchange that connects operators around the globe. What was the motivation or the need in the market to deploy that exchange?
So what we saw was, as some of the very early adopters on the operator side came out with their individual plans, when we were talking more to the content-based companies we dealt with, they had some concerns about, I want to reach my customers, but not all my customers are on operator 1 or operator 2. So how do I reach all of my customers when they're distributed across? I don't really want to pick favorites. I want to be carrier agnostic in a sense. And then that challenge just multiplies for those companies that are international in nature, right? So if they have to deal with 3 to 4 operators per country, you start to have a certain issue of scale and timing of rolling it out. So that was really what drove the interest, was a sort of a one-stop shop type of nature of coming into an exchange and then enabling all the operators who want to participate to sell at whatever their declared desired rates are, to give the multinational brands an ability to have global coverage. And we're certainly not there yet. We're still in the process of rolling out, but that was the longer-term vision on our side.
And Gary, from your vantage point, obviously you have been on the journey for quite a while. How has the reception changed over the course of the last 4 years, particularly from a brand perspective? Were brands finding it difficult to reach a certain segment of the user base, and that's their motivation to consider this proposition, or was there something else?
I think brands have been seeking out more efficient means to acquire, engage, and monetize customers. And so when we started this 4 years ago, it was a new concept. It really hadn't been rolled out by many carriers. But the reception from the brand side was very, very positive around this, using sort of access as a means of incentivization, particularly in environments where data was slightly expensive and there was friction. There's real decision making whether somebody should click and download and install and engage. So actually the content side, I think, was always there. I had much harder time over the last 4 years convincing the carriers that this was the future and to accept this. And to really emphasize what Tim was saying, we found with brands that, and advertisers, sponsors, they're not targeting carriers, they're targeting demographics. Mm-hmm. And so they too wanted something that was cross-carrier, that was cross-geography. And that's, I think, a key component to drive this ecosystem forward.
Gary makes a great point there. I think that what we need to look at is how we can stoke this interest even further in some markets. I think that yes, we find that when brands find out about sponsored data, there's like, God, why didn't we know about this? This is an absolute no-brainer, right? But the reality is the awareness is incredibly low. We know that there are advertising organizations that are, there's a lot of noise in advertising. So, to us, this could be the next, particularly in emerging markets, the next universal brand utility. Approaching what, like 0800 was when that first launched in telecoms. Yeah. But what we need to do is, I think, talk as an industry, as telcos with trusted partners to be able to say what this can do. I think if there were any brand here, they would agree that how can it possibly be fair that a consumer is paying to consume their advertising out of their data plan, as well as the media owner advertising around. And there's no way, whoever you are, anybody would try to justify that. Years ago, when I first started working in this industry in mobile advertising, which is longer than I care to mention here, it was when we first started doing it, we just zero-rated advertising because we just assumed that we were going to do that, because how could we possibly charge people to consume an advert, right? Somewhere along the way, that's been lost. And when you look at things like autoplay video through whichever media provider that is, people will think that using certain apps are free, but we as carriers can see the kind of video usage that goes into certain free platforms, and it's obviously not free as free. But so I think there's really something we can do to try and challenge that. And when you actually, it's not that the brands don't want to do it, it's just that often they don't know about it and they don't know the way to engage. So we as an industry I think need to help raise this awareness bar so that they can find out about it. That's why we're really keen to talk about it at places like this.
I was going to say one thing to add to it. I think what has also helped is the economics, meaning the cost of data to be a sponsor over the last 4 years has dropped quite significantly in a way that feeds into this whole ROI monetization model well for the brands.
Adia, from your vantage point, how are you seeding the market? And are you working with other operators to come on board so that the friction that Tim mentioned around going to different operators for a given market is not there?
So Nigeria, in terms of digital advertising, we're underspending. Mm-hmm. There aren't enough brands, and they are still trying to understand what digital is, mm-hmm. much less mobile advertising, mm-hmm. right? So in as much as there's excitement, what comes after the excitement is a check, right? And we're waiting for the checks. Those don't come as quickly as the exciting conversations. So that's one. All right. So for me, my consideration is: do I have enough brands that can keep this going as a sustainable business model? Because for this to work, yeah. and for us to not completely commoditize data or yeah. train a customer on free, yeah. this has to be, a line item in the advertising budget going forward for yeah. these brands, right? So that's one challenge. On the other hand, you have your mix of like local content versus international content, yeah. right? Yeah. And whose ads are actually consuming whose data yeah. and where the content's coming yeah. from versus being consumed yeah. in Nigeria. So just because there's a P&G in Nigeria, it doesn't mean that if you see a P&G ad, ad when you're on BBC News that has anything to do with P&G in Nigeria.
Yeah.
So you still have the brand consuming the consumer's data problem, even though they may be sponsoring data on another perspective. So, I mean, does it have legs? Yeah, but I guess I'm still a little bit, we're still figuring it out.
Okay, got it.
There's also, we're starting to see in certain markets a lot of use cases around public-private cooperation. So a lot of government charitable-driven activities where a medical research endeavor wants to get more information and understanding, and they need to incent their participants to provide feedback back. So it's not massive data. It's not the size of data that's really the issue. It's just how do you get people to provide that feedback, do that loop. Is you do a combination of sponsored data to utilize the app, and then maybe also give them some data rewards that they can use on top of it to for an extra benefit or incentive for participating in the survey. So there's other types of that public-private partnership that we're seeing that is also kind of some use cases coming up in the emerging markets.
Yeah, I think it's a great point. I'm really glad you brought up data rewards. It's something which is a key part of the strategy as well. On the one hand, there's just taking the cost away and stop cost appearing in a customer's data plan for consuming an app or an advertising, whatever it is. And the other side is actually rewarding people for taking an action, whatever that might be. And something that we're doing in Brazil is using data rewards in a way which is quite interesting. Again, it's tied in with our core services around top-ups, around 30%. This is, around 30% of our customers. This is quite a general figure among carriers in emerging markets. In Latin America, around 30% of our customers run into their data wall every month. And when they run into a data wall, we can now offer them an opportunity to receive megabytes in return for doing things like watching a video. This is point of need marketing. I'm a customer. I want data, and here's a brand who's giving me the opportunity to get some new data. So this isn't something which is cannibalizing an existing revenue stream. This is purely additive and incremental.
Yeah. So what's the onboarding process for brands? Are they looking for certain criteria in terms of who they want to reach, how they want to reach it, and how they measure their ROI?
Of course, they want brands want to reach audiences. Obviously, this is where sponsored data reaches customer data activation. This is where utilizing our connectivity assets like sponsored data and activating our customer data assets in a highly anonymized and robust way, which we always do, obviously, we can provide a personalized, rewarded experience for our customers at a point of need when we know that they actually need it. This is very, very valuable for any brand that's out there, and it's not something that really exists in many other markets. We think this is a new sort of inventory. Really, it's a new. This is a new type of ad format. People wouldn't call sponsored data as an ad format, but it really is a new kind of format.
Besides Brazil, have you launched it in any other market?
Yeah. Brazil is the market that we have a multi-carrier proposition in, where us and all the other telcos are working together. But we're also launched in Colombia, and we have the other markets Mexico is now launched as well, and we're going to be launching in Peru and Argentina over the next few months. So the roadmap is moving quickly. We're also trialing in Germany as well. It's not, another question, is it just for emerging markets? Yeah. So we're also launching in Germany as well. So we're really excited about this, and we don't see it as we see it as something which can be quite symbiotic for consumer, for brand, and for the carrier.
Gary, so US, talking about the developed markets, all US operators are now offering unlimited. So in an unlimited world, does the world need sponsored data?
It's a great question. It's a question I had for AT&T and Verizon, who are enabling certain platforms around sponsored data. The thinking is that, first of all, unlimited in a lot of cases doesn't mean unlimited. There's typically some throttling involved. But the second is that not everyone is the 1% or paying sort of the top tier. to get unlimited data. So the middle tier, the bulk of the subscribers are not necessarily going to be unlimited. So there is a little difference in how we approach sort of the U.S. market. We are deployed here across AT&T and Verizon, providing sponsored data services. But and we do rewards and sponsored data in Southeast Asia. But here we found that the killer app is really about video and audio, because they're very data hungry media types that will impact most people's plans. I certainly turn my phone off when I give it to my son and make sure he doesn't use YouTube, otherwise he consume everything I have. But and that's why I said earlier, we're really thinking about these new content-oriented models around video subscription and potentially ad supported video. And you're starting to see that obviously with AT&T and DirecTV, but having a cross-carrier solution is kind of where we're going.
Are there operators in the room or brands? Any operators? Brands who are looking to, their motivation is reach customers. Just trying to get a sense of what types of questions might be helpful to ask.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
How does it actually look from the customer perspective? Whenever I start using data, do I get reminded this is sponsored by Nike or by McDonald's? Is there a pop-up? What is the consumer perspective? I understand the concept. I just try to understand how does it actually work from a consumer perspective.
Good question. Yeah. So
we actually have a little notification that pops up to remind you that you're in this special mode. I think it's important, and once you're out of that mode, obviously the notification goes away. We've defined certain trademark logos to make sure that you're aware. And in fact, we'll show you afterwards exactly.
It would sit on top of the browser or on top of an app, so anytime I use data, it will pop up every single time?
Yes. Yes.
It can.
And we found that the utilizing the carrier logo is not because we're looking to increase our branding. Obviously, it's just to give the consumer the peace of mind that the experience, the free experience that they're going through is actually bona fide and real, and it's not just telling them that they are getting free data when they're not. So the carrier link there is quite a key one.
Yeah,
so
it's
the carrier logo and the logo of the sponsor.
They can.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, there really are some different ways. So if you're sponsoring in the app itself or a specific media stream, typically you have notification there that's clear. And again, it can be co-branded or different notification. In the case of data rewards, it may be an upfront notification and then some indicator is not necessarily within an app that talks about how much quota or how much allocation you have remaining of your free rewards.
And in other cases, like the data rewards scenario that I just laid out to you before, if someone would be going to the Vivo, which is our operating business in Brazil, they'll be going to their captive portal where they do their top up, and that's where they'll be that's where they'll be communicated about this benefit. So it's kind of given within there that they're experiencing that, and the kind of completed video views as a metric are normally industry standard for a completed video view in advertising is about 30%. When you utilize things like data rewards, we're seeing it up to like 80%. So there's big metric increases there for the brand.
Thanks.
Yeah.
So I heard panelists saying that it's a win-win-win situation. I also understand it is a win for a brand because they're able to engage with the consumer. The completion rate has increased from 30% to 80%. It's a win for me as a consumer because I don't have to pay. Maybe you're from Telefonica, Dan. Is there any figures that you have as to how much revenue? Because at the end of the day, for you it's revenue, right? How much revenue have you been able to make out of this?
Well, obviously, as a listed company, we don't tend to talk about revenues. What I'd say is that it's a high growth business for us. It's really a year and a half old from its infancy, but very high growth, and we are seeing some decent revenues come in. We are starting to see in certain markets that and the markets that we're leading, that we're starting to see big increases in what we're able to get. And I think with any product that's going well, it's about repeat business, right? So what you don't want to do is keep on pushing. It's when people are coming to you, and we're starting to see that now in the key markets.
So basis that maybe 10% growth of revenue because of this? Because I heard you also saying that it's more or less 30% of people who kind of are not able to access data because they've hit the end of their data plan, who you're targeting through this. So what is it from a data perspective? Because that will give us perspective as to how is it a win for the operator also.
Yeah, I mean, a key thing I think to mention here is some of the research that we've carried out, and some of the research that we have carried out on our own customers who are experiencing sponsored data. And some carriers ask that question: what's my experience like as a what it's going to be like for our customers experiencing this, where the benefits that you're receiving is derived from a brand, a third-party brand, never necessarily from us. And what we found is that people see it as something that they're very happy for the operator to be providing that experience and to be able to be bringing it to them. So when you research the overall brand effect of sponsored data on users, we find that that's also to be something which is very positive as well. So that's worked out very well.
Let's move on to the. Yeah, you can.
I would say ask that question next year, right? We'll have more data around that. It's really early days. There's a lot of trial, a lot of learning, fast failing, and things are different in different countries. So I think ask that question next year. We'll have a similar panel discussion. We can probably give a little bit more, predictive, future predictive number.
Hi, my name is Ugo from Nigeria. It's interesting that I've never heard about operators sort of like looking at rewarding with data, especially with core operator products. Because Adia actually and I will be talking about how we can sort of like grow success rate with for subscribers trying to access just content. So for example, like gaming, we see failure rate extremely high. So how can we introduce how can we introduce a platform where brands can pay, for subscribers to access the content? And we're about to test out. We don't really know how well it's going to do, but we were sort of like exploring it at the moment. So they are actually doing a lot of work around this. But it would be interesting to understand the commercial models around, the brands, the operator, the platform, maybe have networks and how that sort of like, if it's sort of like a revenue share model or how that works for everyone.
I mean, app developers pay a boatload of money for customer acquisition.
But it's about $100 million,
Yeah.
$100 billion was being spent. I mean, every app developer has set aside a marketing budget. And our approach to market is, use what you use today, whether it's Google, Facebook. We just take a blended approach, and I can give you a far more cost-effective approach to acquiring, but more importantly, engaging, getting closer to be able to monetize. And you mentioned the gaming space. It is one we're highly focused on. There's a huge appetite, both from the advertiser side, but also from consumers. And there's no shortage of games that set aside, obviously, quite a bit of marketing dollars to invest in.
Hey, you mentioned more cost efficient, so does it mean that the CPM rates are lower than normal in advertising, or what do you mean?
So earlier I mentioned that we haven't published this case study just yet, but in Indonesia, for example, we have found that we can give a 40% more cost-effective approach for CPI compared to sort of what the industry norms are for games in that geography. But more importantly, because CPI, that's far removed in the funnel to try to monetize that customer, but we can give you engagement. And the example I gave was about 30 minutes average engagement for the cost of a CPI. It normalized in that particular country, and that's huge. And once you get to about 30-35 minutes engaging in a game, that's a hook customer. Invested customers.
And with regards to that, I think it's, Gary raises a great point. It's about connecting, it's about joining the dots between the connectivity data, the megabytes, and the customer data, obviously in a very privacy compliant way. And by tying those two together, that's when this really starts exploding, so you can understand the value of that, because installs are great, but if you speak to most people who are involved in the app install business, an install is not worth as much as it used to, because actually it's all about post-install engagement and understanding the quality of the audiences that are actually delivered to by the advertiser. And what you touched on so far is the performance advertising budgets, which is obviously very important. But the largest advertising budgets globally are not, that's not to say performance is not incredibly valuable, and with the numbers you were talking about there clearly, but brand advertising budgets and the world's biggest advertisers, the Procter & Gamble's, the Unilevers, they're brand advertisers. And that's an area where I think, you know, this can also raise some real interest as well. When you talk to some of these big FMCG companies, these big advertisers, you know, Procter & Gamble are making some very bold statements in the press at the moment about what's going on in the digital advertising world, with things like some negative aspects that are around there at the moment with ad fraud and interruptive advertising. When you look at sponsored data, that's a real force for good here, because you're providing a better experience for the customer, and that combined with the increased performance rates that we're already talking about, you know, 40%, 80%. It's actually a really big opportunity for brand advertising as well. So that's by no means saying that this can't be good for performance advertising. Of course it is, and we've shown that it can do. But brand advertising, which is the biggest market in the world, we also think it's highly relevant for that as well.
Let me get Adia involved, and then I'll get to your question. You know, as you're formulating this plan, obviously some of the KPIs we have discussed. But what are the KPIs that your management is keen on understanding, or will keep a keen eye on, to really understand, well, this is working or not working? Like, what are the performance criteria for the business itself from your vantage point?
Monetization, really. I think. So we just launched Facebook Flex, right, which is not quite sponsored data, but at least it's a sort of try before you buy type of situation, right? So what's the measure of success there? Is if after trying you decide to buy and become an engaged data user. The struggle in a prepaid market is to get anybody to do something to pay for something on a continuous basis. So consumers are almost hostile to subscription plans. They're not interested. They want full control over their experience. They want to stop it whenever they want. They want to start it up whenever they want. If they want half a day subscription versus a full month, that they want a plan that meets their exact needs. Now, so when we do roll this out, what we'd be looking for is hooked data customers. Right? So if customers start going out and demanding that any brand that wants their attention starts paying for data, hey, that works for me. All right? So I feel like the story may unfold with some nuance to what is happening. I think there will be some success. You know, I think big and small brands will actually jump on this bandwagon. But again, it's going to be the sustainability.
Right.
So what happens to those consumers when they start getting free data from their bank or from their grocery store, right? And then they've gotten it and they've reached the limits. Because in Nigeria, I'm quite sure we will reach whatever limits anybody sets. We will reach and exceed them, and then the customer will be like, now what? Right? So if at that now what point the customer decides to buy data, then we'll be fine. But if the customer then decides to wait out the period to find another brand that pays for their data, then we have a big problem. So I guess that would be a combination of what they're looking at and what I'd be looking at.
So you're talking of brands using, so this question could be for Dan. So how much of effort and cost would you think you'll have to get enough number of brands so that this entire kind of engagement is successful? So, or who takes the ownership of getting the brands to you? So is that something you have a separate team wherein you have to do it, or is that something that the vendors bring along with their ecosystem, saying that, you know, I have the sponsored data, so that could be Gary saying, I already have hundreds and 200s of brands, and you bring to this. So who manages this, especially on a multi-geo kind of a situation?
It's a very good question, and at the moment, we're so early in this market. We're all learning. At the moment, for us, it's a combination. I don't think anybody would want to stop themselves from exploring all avenues. Where we focus at the moment is on our own direct sales team. We're fortunate at Telefonica in that we're quite active in advertising. So we use our own direct sales teams to speak to the market, to speak to brands and articulate that. We also work with our partners who will actually engage the ecosystem directly in what they're doing. And we are, there are a number of different parties that we're working with to try and bring this kind of capability online. I think this is normal in any new market, which this is. You sort of start with direct sales where you need to talk to the market about it. Like I said, eventually we'll get to the inflection point where we just can sit back and take orders. At the moment, we're still pushing. We need to talk to the market, but the response that we're getting from the market is incredibly positive for all the win-win-win discussions that we're talking about. And also, there's publicity is important today. That's why I'm here today. That's why I'm sure the market here today. We need to just let the brands know specifically that this is happening. Can I just ask a question quickly? How many people here are from a brand? Agency, okay, so at least we've got one. I think this is part of the problem, it's great that we're doing this, and I'm really happy I attended today. What we need to do is to make sure that we're talking to brands, we're talking to marketers, and really connecting with them about what the benefits are.
Right.
Could I just add to that? So it depends on sort of the agency dynamics in the ad sale market in your market, right? So everything I say is sort of beneath that lens. But then you've got a few models, right? The operator can either try to sell the advertising themselves, which we're not all good at. Telefonica is probably great at it. Etisalat, this is a new muscle for us that we have to cultivate, right? We're used to selling minutes and megabytes, right? Or you have a platform provider.
Sorry, we don't sell it ourselves. We speak to the agencies or the owners who have inventory. Yeah.
Okay.
We speak to the. I should have said I should have been clearer. Apologies. We speak to the advertising ecosystem about sponsorship, but we don't. Yeah.
Okay. But so we get approached directly, actually, and people are looking for Etisalat personnel to actually sell them the inventory, right? Which is a new skill, like I said. Or you have a technology provider who's never been an agency before and now has decided they want to start approaching brands. Or you have an agency that knows how to get the brands but doesn't understand any technology, much less mobile. So you've got three sets of people who really don't know how to do this business, and there's we're not really sure what's going to work, so everybody's having a go at it, and then I guess we'll see who comes out on the other side. But frankly, it's created a big problem for me trying to figure out what the right go-to-market strategy for that type of mobile advertising is.
In the markets where operators have been successful with advertising, is typically the ones where they have set up probably some set of JVs or some seeding with the advertising ecosystem directly, like Japan, Korea, Turkey, and so on and so forth. So more involvement is necessary directly with the agencies and brands.
And the go-to-market challenge Adia talked about, that's just in the advertising space, right? But there are other use cases for sponsored data in terms of the actual video, audio content Gary was talking about. And maybe there is in certain markets a subscription model where it's the content is driving the subscription and the connectivity comes with it. And all the discussion about the Internet of Things and moving away from products to services, you have a lot more connected things that need to be connected.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. It's beyond the smartphone, right? I mean, it's tablets and automobiles and other sorts of devices in the house that can be connected to the same principle.
Right, and so if you're selling a service, why not have the connectivity piece be part of that service?
That is true. Yeah.
Hi, Obi Azama from Pine. I'm just wondering, from where you see this going, or what sort of vibes you're getting from brands, is there like a tension between targeting their audience versus willing to pay in terms of, you're probably targeting, like, especially in emerging markets, like the people that can't pay for data, how are they going to buy into brands? Or are you getting a very positive, almost like trying to chase the unbanked or people from brands? What sort of vibes are you getting from?
In terms of for the there's a few different areas, right? So you talk about unbanked. I mean, one of our biggest clients is a bank, and they are using sponsored data to just make their online mobile banking free of charge. right? And in that case, the business model is very clear, which is Bradesco Bank in Brazil, right? For Bradesco Bank, they pay not just Telefonica, but all the other operators in Brazil by the megabyte for each megabyte that's used on their banking app. Since they've done that, engagement has increased by, I think, 80% on it, and they've had twice as many downloads or 3 times as many downloads of the app, right? The business model there is about reducing the cost of their service. So it's less people calling into their phone lines and less people going into their actual banks. So the business model there is different. So they're reducing costs in another part of business by pushing online banking, right? For other parts in terms of brands, in terms of for the targeting side, there is, that's about blending the understanding and insights that carriers are able to bring to bear on the market and blending that with the connectivity assets that we have, like sponsored data. So there's two different sides to it, and like I said, the brands that know and that we can talk to and that who can understand the benefits, they're just the vibes they're sending back are very positive indeed. It's just about we just need to talk to them.
Tim, so you are obviously in the process of rolling this out. Are certain markets responding better and more positively than others, or what's the market dynamics in terms of getting folks onto the exchange?
So we initially started with a thought that we would focus primarily on the emerging markets because of the share of wallet concerns that Gary had talked about a little bit, that Adia shared in terms of people wanting more, not monthly plans, want prepaid, so there's a kind of a cap. But what we've seen lately is that also in the developed market there's an interest from the brands to reach out in different types of use cases, like the one Dan shared about the banks, right? So it's not really advertising. That's about how do I become more efficient. So we're seeing different use cases resonate in either places. One challenge or concern that comes up more consistently in the emerging markets from the operators is a concern around fraud and how do you protect against that. So it's critical that when you're deploying this, that you think through how you manage it, because there are multiple ways in the past people have tried and gotten burned, and so that is one sort of common concern we see much more out of the emerging markets is making sure that there's protection against fraudulent use.
Any final questions from the audience?
Just a quick question. How do you onboard subscribers into this?
We have an online portal. I'm happy to send it to you. Basically, credit card based. If you're a brand and you want to promote your brand in various geographies, we have the means of doing that where we're deployed.
Yes, and on our side, it's when we work with the operators, it's a simple configuration where we set up private IP addressing and then create a wholesale billing relationship, and then on the content side, it's a SDK that the app developer can put in. So really, the actual individual subscriber is onboarded through the app itself. We don't do anything to onboard individual subscribers. It's more a one-time setup with the operators and a one-time setup with the app developer.
And are you guys eating your own dog food? Like, are you using you are doing advertising on your own through the channel that you have just created?
So I am, like Dan, a big fan of point of need marketing. So one of the things we've had to do is try to balance the impact on the brand by being very measured about how loudly we will eventually talk about this when we start creating mobile advertising inventory on the network. So for me, it's really I'll lead with point of need marketing and then take it from there.
Got it.
And for us, Brazil, which is the lead market for sponsored data, we are, I'll say, drinking our own Kool-Aid, for that expression. We are, that is the lead market for us. So, and they are Vivo, who are our business over there, are incredibly supportive of this. They can see how well the customers have responded to it, so they've been adopting it through their comms teams as well.
the interesting thing is a lot of operators are doing this themselves for their own customer care apps and portals and zones. They really haven't turned it into a monetization strategy to go beyond that. Mm-hmm. So in a way, there are a lot of operators using sponsored data, 0 rating for their own apps, eating their own dog food, but it's more how do you turn it into an actual business commercial model to monetize it beyond and find third-party sponsors.
We didn't get into the regulatory aspect of it, but probably that's left to some other session. Gary, next year, what are we going to talk about on the same subject? What do you expect, or what are your hopes and dreams for the next year?
We can certainly talk about the revenue ramp-up associated with sponsored data. I think you're going to see deployments all over the world, not just in isolated countries in South America or Southeast Asia. One of the things that even happened in the last year is, in terms of education, I don't need to sell the opportunity. People now know what sponsored data, whether you're a carrier, and a little bit more than selling on the brand side, but I think it's going to be common in the lexicon moving forward.
Great. Dan, your thoughts?
I think that a lot more brands will hopefully understand, I believe they will understand that connectivity can be, connectivity, which is a universal customer need, can be a universal marketing utility, mm-hmm. and be used widely. And we'll start seeing more use cases from more verticals. We've spoken about gaming today, we've spoken about banking today, we've spoken about display and video views. I think we're only just starting to scratch the surface on where we are. So hopefully in 12 months' time we'll be talking about use cases in that we haven't even thought of today.
Are there any final words?
I think in Nigeria, I said that there are not enough major brands that would immediately be interested in this at sort of a nationwide level. But I think at a more hyper-localized level, small businesses will probably be very interested in this. Yeah. So I think that if we can find a really good way to communicate a simple proposition that even people that are new to the internet or new to data can just use, it could actually make a significant difference to small business customer acquisition in Nigeria.
Tim, final word?
So I tend to agree with Dan. I think the number of use cases is ready to explode if we do it properly. Right? If you think back to some of the emergence the last couple of years of the communication as a service platform providers and the way in which app developers are now using SMS and voice numbers and calling embedded in the apps to do and serve a whole number of new use cases. If we do the same thing with sponsored data, we're going to see this exponential growth in the different types of use case if we can make it easy and available to the brands and their developer communities to have access to it.
Great. Well, with that, please join me in thanking the panelists. It has been a good discussion around sponsored data. Thank you.